Every few months, the videos start making the rounds about how modern translations are removing verses. In Matthew 17:21, the verse about casting out certain kinds of demons and spirits is at the top of everyone's list. I need answers. What are they trying to hide from us? We are not to add or take away. They're giving demons free reign. Revelation 22:19 even says, and if anyone takes words away from this book of prophecy, God will take away from that person any share in the tree of life and in the holy city. And look, I admire folks' passion with this. For some folks, they wrap a lot of their personal dogma around Matthew 17:21, especially folks involved in deliverance ministries and stuff like that. And I get it, I'm not discounting you when you're handed something and told to believe that every single line has been there for all time and is an absolute. It's jarring when you find out that it is an absolute fact that Matthew 17:21 is not in the earliest existent versions of Matthew. So therefore, the Bibles, the newer translations, that do not have Matthew 17:21 are actually rendering a more faithful translation of the source texts. And we know this because 0 existent copies of Matthew, including Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus, have that verse. It's assumed that the scribes who later added it were attempting to bring the scene in Matthew 17 more in line with the book of Mark, specifically Mark 9:29. But there's no conspiracy. This is what interpreters and translators sometimes did when grouping these individual books together. Don't be upset, it happens. Another example is where the ending of Mark's gospel was obviously added later to bring the ending of that gospel more in line with the other gospels. And that may have opened up a can of worms for a lot of folks, but go check your Bible's footnotes. You'll see that what happened after the empty tomb in Mark was added later. So newer translations are now taking Matthew 17:21 and similar verses out or putting them into the footnotes. Some of these versions are the ASV, CEV, ESV, CSB, NIV, NCV, NLT, and obviously the NRSV. And there's no conspiracy. The new Bibles are giving a more accurate representation of the source text. That's a good thing. And since this event is also referenced in Mark 9:29, it's still in the Bible. But another problem comes up when you read Mark 9:29. The and fasting part was added to that text later as well. The earliest copies of Mark don't have the and fasting part. Why? Well, we don't know exactly why the and fasting part was added, but some historians think it's because of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century church's position on the importance of fasting. And some early church fathers like Tertullian put such an emphasis on fasting that when interpreting texts that mention prayer, they inserted fasting instead of prayer. An example is when teaching on Cornelius' prayer in Acts 10, when the angel said, "Thy prayer is heard" in Acts 10:31, Tertullian taught it, "Thy fasting is heard." And some early church fathers and scribes went so far to reveal that they thought fasting was more important than prayer. So it's completely plausible that when later scribes saw prayer, in their minds, since they tied prayer and fasting together, that's the way they understood the text to read. Again, it's not a conspiracy. It's just how human translation works. And if you think about it, it was a way to help people understand why their prayers may not be as effective as they desired. Go back and read verse 17:20 again. "You don't have enough faith," Jesus told them. "I tell you the truth, if you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible." Now, in every early copy of Matthew, that's where the conversation ends. But when you add in the later edition of 17:21, let's read it again. "You don't have enough faith. I tell you the truth. If you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." Now, think about that on a deeper level. It's quite a difference, isn't it? Lots of implications there. Jesus is simply saying it's about faith, and the disciples didn't have enough. And Jesus is rightly miffed. By this point, hey, they had seen Jesus perform insane miracles. They had seen some stuff and even did a lot of this themselves. But yet in this particular situation, they didn't have faith. But this later edition of Matthew 17:21 adds in that little qualifier. However, this kind does not come out except by prayer and fasting. And that changes things up a little bit, doesn't it? Something else I want to quickly address again is when a lot of people see stuff like this, they immediately jump to Revelation 22:19, which is a warning against removing words from this book of prophecy. And modern Christians believe this to be a warning against removing books from the Bible. But when Revelation 22:19 was written, the Bible did not exist. Revelation 22:19 is referring to that specific book of prophecy, the book of Revelation. We can't take a warning we read in Revelation to apply to the rest of a collection of works which haven't been gathered together as a whole yet and wouldn't be for centuries. Look, Lots of verses were added and removed from the Bible. Its books were debated for centuries. Revelation barely even made the cut. The history of the Bible's construction is a lot wilder than we've been led to believe. And again, this is not attacking the validity of the Bible. Do we just throw it out because there have been some changes to it over the centuries? That's a silly argument to make. And yes, you can ask questions about the Bible, and I think that it's healthy to do, and it helps deepen one's faith instead of burying a person's head in the sand and going, la, 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 la. That's what's not healthy. Questions are good. Questions are what deepen relationships, not settling for surface level blech. Let's be like the Bereans and ask the hard questions and not be afraid of hard answers. Faith is a mystery to be embraced, not an instruction manual to ritually and mindlessly follow. God bless. See you soon.